I should have Frazetta's entire artistic work memorized. Shame on me. Hey, welcome back. You're at Ground Zero Salem with Pat. I'm about to pop in the Fed Ash tape, split with a band called FENTANYL TAPWATER. Don't know anything about FENTANYL TAPWATER, but Fed Ash are from Syracuse, New York, my hometown. I had a previous release by them, another split with a band called Landfill that was quite good. This is like somewhat noisy, kind of all over the place, hectic grindcore. Very, very good stuff. And I think this is their strongest release yet. I'll leave a link for it in the description, of course, as I always do. So feel free to scope that out if you're into grind. That being said, I have an update. Big old stack of CDs, mostly Doom and Sludge stuff. A couple of updates back, I talked about stuff I've been into lately. Not sure if it was just the winter or whatever, but I decided to deep dive on a lot of sludgy stuff that I really hadn't given much of an ear to. Previously, it was a subgenre that I was a big picky eater about, you know, namely, I liked a couple of Crowbar things, like one I Hate God record. That's about it. I think I got into that Brain Oil 12-inch, and I really liked that a lot, but didn't really delve too much into other stuff. So there's some sludge in here, a whole bunch of doom metal, filling in a lot of cracks of like doom metal bands, classic doom for the most part, trad doom I guess you could call it. Bands that I had a few things by, but I just wanted more because I've just been in the mood for that kind of stuff. I'm kind of pulling out of that nosedive right now. Maybe it's just the bright sunny weather or the new job that I got or whatever. I'm kind of more in the mood for stuff that's a little bit more upbeat. But I'm still jamming this stuff a lot. But I want to put this stack to bed and file it away. So let's talk about it. This I need to listen to more. I feel like it deserves a mention because it's certainly pretty unique. It's Dark Castle. And I'm trying to remember if they're from somewhere in the South or the Baltimore area, which is almost the South. But I believe they're from the South of the U.S., really, really cool, like, two-person personnel project. I know they must probably tour with a drummer. It's got a lot of traditional doom sort of elements in terms of, like, somewhat melodic kind of riffs, like somber melodic kind of riffs. There's some acoustic. The title track is like a creepy acoustic number, but more leaning towards like a heavier, throaty kind of death metal sort of growl. I don't think that really qualifies it as death doom per se. They have a lot of approaches riff-wise that are somewhat different from a lot of bands that would fall into that bucket. Really good, though. Spirited Migration is the name of it, and it came out on At a Loss Recordings. Then we got Graveyard, just like some heavy rock stuff from Sweden. You could maybe call them like the cooler side of the pillow in terms of doom stuff. Excuse me. I know at one point there was like one member that was also in Witchcraft, whose first couple of records I liked quite a bit. Very similar musically to Witchcraft, except for the vocals, whereas Witchcraft had kind of a shrill, sort of like, I don't know, almost like a nasally traditional doom kind of approach. These guys, it's more of a croon, it's more of a, I read Danzig and Ian Astbury kind of approach, like that's what a few journalists said. I see that, but I can also hear like that early 2000s, like the Hives, like that kind of garage rock kind of stuff sort of happening with the vocals a little bit. Maybe that's just because that's the same part of the world they're from, right? I don't know if it's something in the water. It's kind of slightly warbly as well as being a croon. I don't know. But good, like, woody sounding riffs. They definitely did their homework with worshiping the 70s brand of heavy rock. You know, it's just like foreboding and like morose enough at times to be heavy and doomy, but not really. You know, a lot of it's not exactly Sabbath worshipping at all. You can tell they're listening to probably Cream, Deep Purple, I don't know, that kind of shit. But quality riffs, really good stuff from the past, I want to say the past decade, but the decade before that, because time just won't stop. Then we got some Cavity stuff. A lot of Cavity stuff, actually. So I read a pretty decent, like, book about doom metal that covered everything from the early Pentagram stuff to ISIS. I believe it was called Doomed to Fail, if that's right. Let's look it up on my phone. I can't believe I don't remember this. It's Doomed to something. I just read it. Where is it here? Real time. Real time, I'm looking this up. Yeah, Doomed to Fail. Okay. Yeah, so I just read that book, Doomed to Fail, that covered a lot of just the history of the whole genre and every little branch that came out of it. And at one point, they talk about Cavity in there. And I was like, oh yeah, that band Cavity. Like, I heard about them during their heyday when they started in the 90s. I knew that they were kind of a sludgy project. They had a lot of heavy riffs. I believe I heard that they shared members with, like, Floor and Torch, you know. But I never really checked them out for whatever reason. And oh man, is this a fucking totally unique, singular entity. I mean, yeah, they do have the sort of like, you know, screechy dirtbag vocals that belong with a lot of sludge stuff. They do have like the big, heavy, you know, somewhat like 70s inspired Sabbathy riffs, I guess. But their approach and their energy, you can tell that they come from the hardcore scene or the punk scene. I don't know what it is about it. You know, it's first listen, it's not too different from Buzz Oven or I Hate God or any of that kind of stuff. Distortion, you know, feedback, big fat riffs, whatever. But there's just something about the execution. And they also kind of run the gamut throughout all these albums. I can't pretend to be an expert and say, oh, this is the one that's more this or that, you know. I will say that Super Collider seems to be the fan favorite from what I've seen, what I've read about it. People seem to like this one a lot. This one reminds me a little bit more of like, maybe they were listening to more like desert rock or like Fu Manchu or something. It's a little bit more upbeat, but you can hear that on all their records, so what the fuck do I know? This seems to be the most immediate and punk. This is the one that came out on Pusshead's label back in Bacteria Sour, back in whatever it was in the 90s. Laid Insignificant. This might be my favorite. It seems to have like the most amount of immediacy and quick songs on it, shorter songs, which I usually go for. This cover is a pity though. I mean, this is also Pusshead art, which is cool. It's like this lattice work or maze or whatever it is, but man, the original art is awesome. It's a very Pusshead looking thing. It's just like a woman's face with lots of stippling, but it looks great. Then there's this singles collection, 92 to 97. Miscellaneous Recollections. This is also a good one. I'm a sucker for a singles collection, if you know me. I just love just the different production styles, usually in comps, and it just makes for a lot of variety, so I like that a lot. And it also has a lot of like pretty immediate sounding songs. They do play fast on occasion, you know, but the members all came out of the punk scene according to that book. And there's just something about it you can just tell. They also like looked like normal dudes. They weren't like long-haired, mustachioed fucks like me. Anyway, and then there's a couple of other ones. Cavity, On the Lam, and this cool, look at that western theme, Somewhere Between the Train Station. They're all good. I'm still spinning them constantly and kind of absorbing them, so, you know, that's the thing about being, having a little bit of disposable income. You're like, I want it all now! And CDs are a great way to do that, because they're still not that expensive. Unless you're talking about, like, you know, Roadrunner earache CDs from the early 90s, and they're $1,000 friggin' dollars. Then we've got this Crowbar compilation of 3 albums. Archive metal in its purest form. This includes Oddfellows Rest, Equilibrium, and Sonic Excess in its purest form. Crowbar was a big deal for me when I was getting into a lot of extreme music. They came across my radar via MTV at a time that I was really into Saint Vitus and Paradise Lost, alongside all the death metal I was listening to and hardcore. And I loved them because they had like really, really heavy, slow, punishing riffing, but a guy that grunted and sounded like a hardcore guy. Years later, when I got into Sheer Terror, I noticed a really distinct, similar vocal style between Kurt Weinstein and Paul Bearer. And I don't know if that's deliberate or not. You know, I don't know if that just happens organically when you're like a big angry dude. Who knows? But I always wanted to hear more Crowbar stuff, and I've listened to like plenty on streaming over the years. This was my chance to kind of get a hold of a physical product and dig into some some albums later on in their catalog. I was familiar with Obedience Through Suffering and the self-titled, of course, and that was about it. And I always heard really, really good things about these, and I spun them a few times, like in the background at work, at what I get to say is my old job now. And there's just something, the older I get, I just can't really absorb stuff through streaming. I think it's just, maybe it's just like this inherent tendency to need to buy stuff, which is probably not healthy, but whatever. I don't know. I knew that I wanted to check out Sonic XS in its purest form the most. That seems to get the best reviews, and it's great. It's super good. Like a really expanded sound. It sounds like more of a big room, quote unquote, kind of approach, production wise. Kurt has like kind of developed his vocal approach a little bit more. He's crooning a bit more himself as opposed to like this sort of like grunt shout sort of thing he was doing. There's a lot more like melodicism involved. It's just as heavy, but it seems to be a little bit more expanded in a melodic direction. That's great. Oddfellows Rest and Equilibrium are along the same lines. You can see where they're building up on that, which I'm assuming that Sonic XS came out after these, but I'm not actually sure at this point. So, but it's great regardless. It's all their stuff past their big self-titled record when they were like touring with Pantera and everything. I saw them on the Oddfellows Rest tour, and they were great. It was really unfortunate because I don't know if it was due to how the show was advertised, but nobody showed up. It was them with I Hate God, and there were like 40 people there. It was actually at that show that I got into a conversation with a friend of mine, and he told me about Cavity to bring that around. But also, Mike Williams didn't show up to sing for I Hate God. I don't know where he was, but I Hate God just jammed on Sabbath songs for like a half an hour and then called it a night. So, fun story time with me. I think it's time to flip this over. Alright, so this is the Fentanyl tap water side. Kind of wondering, like, is this going to be straight up noise? It sounds like a noise band name. I can't wait to be surprised. Then, after Crowbar in the stack, we've got a ton of Penance stuff. That's right, I went hog wild on Cavity and Penance. So we have The Road Revisited, Parallel Corners, Alpha Omega, Proving Ground. Ah, awesome. It's like really dirty, crusty, hardcore punk stuff. Proving Ground. And Spiritual Natural. Penance is a band I've been into for a long time. I had The Road Less Traveled, which is a different version of this, and Parallel Corners on cassette. I've been listening to them for, I don't know, like 15 years or something. I had a big resurgence with Doom, like a lot of traditional Doom stuff, right around the time I moved back to Boston, so like 2006 or 2007. I was like on the doommetal.com forum a ton, just checking out. It's when I discovered like Pagan Altar, and finally got a hold of, like, via downloading Witchfinder General, who I'd wanted to check out for a long time. And I discovered Penance. I knew that they were post Dream Death. Dream Death being this really important band to doom metal that they almost just sound like a slowed down Slayer, but in a great way, like a mix of Celtic Frost and Slayer. If you know anything about underground metal, you've probably heard of Dream Death. But I wanted to hear this band Penance that was the continuation of Dream Death. And on this Road Revisited stuff, as well as The Road Less Traveled, they do sound a lot like Dream Death still. Their vocalist hasn't quite developed his pipes into like sort of a singing style. It's still kind of a raspy shout, kind of desperate sounding. Great riffs, of course. Gotta have good riffs if it's doom metal. And I also got a hold of Parallel Corners quite a while ago, where they're developing their style into more of an epic kind of doom. Doesn't have the same level of range that Messiah Marcolin or Robert Lowe has, but he's kind of getting there. It's sort of a croon. Great riffs, like super desperate, heavy stuff. Not like a lot of groove to it or anything. Like a very somber approach. And then as their career progresses into the 2000s. All these came out in the early 2000s, from like 2000 or 2001 to 2004, with Spiritual Natural, I think, being the last one of the three. They get a lot more of like kind of a groove to them, like almost sort of stonerish, more along the lines of something like Pentagram or The Obsessed, with the vocalist getting better with each release. But very, very cool stuff. This one came with a bonus CD that has Martyr Music Group stuff on it, which includes everything from M. Symphona to Sinister to Circle of Dead Children. Interesting. Then I got a couple of High on Fire CDs. Matt Pike from Sleep, of course. Veering dangerously close to Door Guy Metal. Becoming a Door Guy Metal dude. I'll have to start carting once things open up again at my local establishment. But High on Fire I always liked. I had both of these downloaded years ago. I liked the kind of like super fuzzed out heaviness, but also speeding things up to like a Motorhead kind of pace a lot of the time. You know, big deal. Band was a big deal for a long time for a good reason. I don't have anything else by them. I'm kind of happy with these two. I still need to check out the Art of Self-Defense, that debut. I heard Death's Communion when it came out. I was so with it. But this is Blessed Black Wings and Surrounded by Thieves, which I think are their two best and kind of the height of their popularity. I think they just did something recently. Tell me in the comments if they did. I feel like they did. But I know Matt Pike's been tied up with like the Sleep reunion stuff lately as well. But 2002 and 2004 there. Then, this is a good time. This is one of these bands where I'm like, I love this and I don't know why. This is so weird. Why do I like this? I went whole hog on everything by Acid Bath. A band that I tried so many times, pretty much like since they came out. I remember reading reviews of them in Metal Maniacs for, what's the Kevorkian one? Pagan Terrorism Tactics. I remember reading the review of this, thinking it sounded really interesting. And I'm thinking, oh, this is really heavy, cool, really crushing. What's up with those vocals? Sounds like a grunge singer. It's like proto-nu metal. Well, I wasn't thinking it was proto-nu metal at the time, because nu metal hadn't happened yet. Over the years, I've gone back, because a lot of people swear by these guys. Louisiana band, you know, definite, like, sludge royalty from down there. And something about picking up When the Kite String Pops, it just clicked. I don't know why. I think more and more as the statute of limitations is up from nu metal not being popular anymore and all that radio grunge stuff. Also, I'm not constantly exposed to it like I used to be. I can kind of enjoy this vocal style. He has more than one, Dax Riggs, but when he does that kind of croony style, which, I mean, he was doing it long before any of the nu metal guys were, of course, I can appreciate it for what it is, and the weird twists and turns that this band takes, being bordering on death metal at 1 minute and then like melodic heavy alternative a la Alice in Chains another, and like just a weird sort of like unnerving instrumental the next, you know. When the Kite String Pops is way more all over the place, I feel like, than Pagan Terrorism Tactics. If you didn't know, John Wayne Gacy did the art for this, and Dr. Kevorkian did the art for this. These guys were clearly writing letters to those folks. I don't know if there's another killer person that did the art for this or not. This is the demos collection, which has 2 demos with songs from both records, although the record is mostly songs from When the Kite String Pops. It's like a Dr. Seuss's Dead demo, I believe it's called, which has like, I think 9 out of the 12 songs on it or something like that. The other is tracks from the second record. But interesting to note that Dr. Seuss's Dead record is super heavy and has almost like a brutal death metal tone to it to me. Like musically, it's along the same lines as the debut. It's a little bit quicker, but just the tone-wise and the sound of the bass, it almost kind of sounds like Suffocation or something. Just tone-wise, not musically. Very, very, very heavy, punishing. So yeah, I'm an Acid Bath fan now. Never thought that would happen. I went back to them once every 5 years, 10 years, something like that, and was just like, ugh, fucking vocals are terrible. Another band kind of like that, actually, is Burning Witch. You know, we were talking about the people that helped kick off Southern Lord, went on to Sun, all that stuff. You know, this I had at a certain point in my life, like in the mid-2000s. Didn't like the vocals. Not too dissimilar from what's going on in the background. You know, these kind of like screechy, sort of screamed vocals. I wasn't a fan. Gone back. I still am like, yeah, it's pretty good. You know, I know a lot of people swear by this stuff. Vocals don't bother me as much anymore. Great, heavy, really just fucking punishingly heavy riffs. I realize my verbiage is kind of repeating itself here, but what are you gonna do? Then we've got the Reverend Bizarre from the early to mid 2000s, Finnish doom band, traditional doom, very sort of like regal, commanding kind of vocals, not quite in the same range as Messiah Marklin or Robert Lowe, but it's got that sort of dramatic kind of thing going on that really makes traditional doom for me. Good gallopy stuff to it. I mean, there's a lot of snail's pace stuff going on with it, but there's also a fair amount of like kind of march tempo shit that I always enjoy. Then Confessor, I got Condemned, which came out back in the day, and Unraveled, which was their return to form, return to the world release. Confessor were divisive for a lot of people. I wouldn't even say divisive, because divisive is suggestive of the fact that like half the people liked it and half the people didn't. I feel like the majority, or at least 75% of people who heard Confessor hated the vocals, and I understand that. On a stream that Marty and Alan were doing a little while ago, they were talking about really unique bands, I think, or bands that were really singular in their sound and approach, something along those lines. And Watchtower came up, and I was like, yeah, Confessor's like the Doom Watchtower, which is harder to do, because if you have like really high, piercing, shrieking vocals that are sung well and sung in pitch and everything, going over speed metal or something thrashy, it can work really well. Going over like oddly technical doom that's a tall order, and I think it takes an acquired taste, a trained ear, if you will, to appreciate it. I definitely didn't like Confessor the first time I heard them, much the same way with Acid Bath. I'm gonna flip this back over to Fed Ash. I went back on a few things and repeated a few things, so there's probably gonna be some weird gaps in the music, but who cares? But yeah, after really getting Confessor and getting into it, I really appreciate it. I'm not always in the mood for it. You know, the guy's vocals are kind of tough to take. Unraveled, their comeback record, he still has that range, but he's dialed it in a little bit. He kind of brings it almost into sort of a Solitude Aeternus sort of thing, which is, you know, heavier than that and a little bit more like, I'd say a little bit more like thrash influenced, but it's definitely not nearly as like weirdly jarring as the debut is, but also very good. Season of Mist put this out. I didn't look this up in advance. Oh, this came out a hell of a while ago. 2005. Okay. Then we've got Gates of Slumber. Band that I got into during that era, end of the 2000s, where I just got obsessed with doom metal again, which was one of my earlier loves. And I really, really clicked with this band because they had a strong similarity to the stuff I loved, St. Vitus and Pentagram and everything, but enough of outside influences. I always heard a little bit of the fuzzy 70s stoner stuff a little bit here and there, a lot of classic kind of gallopy heavy metal, and I mean, still, this is my favorite by them, which is one of their earlier records, their debut, I believe, A Suffer No Guilt. This was definitely a deal where I lucked out. I was looking for copies of this. They were really expensive on CD everywhere. You know, one of those cases where CDs are more than they should be. And then I just found this in a distro for like $5 and was very, very excited because it is my favorite thing by them. I also picked up Hymns of Blood and Thunder, which is no slouch either, and their last record that they did, The Wretch. This band is such a great example of just artistic representation of the sounds contained therein, done so well. These great Conan the Barbarian, Swords and Sorcery covers, This might actually be a Frazetta painting. I'm not sure. I should have Frazetta's entire artistic work memorized. Shame on me. And it's a shame because two of the members, I think, have passed now from Gates of Slumber. It's a big loss to the music scene. Big loss to Doom. Really, really awesome band. Yeah, not much else to say than that. I got to see them once with Magic Circle, and what a gig that was. That was great. Glad I got to catch them when I could. And then some Pentagram. You know, it's Pentagram. Their classic stuff is super important. Kind of a shame what Bobby turned into, you know, but I don't want to get into that. But I decided I need to grab the First Days Here too, and Be Forewarned. I love Pentagram's 80s stuff just as much, if not more, than their 70s stuff. This is actually 90s, but 80s and 90s Pentagram is quite good. I find that the thicker, heavier songwriting and production appeals to me a little bit more than some of the 70s material. Some of the 70s stuff is very doomy, but some of it kind of sounds like a Rolling Stones knockoff or something, which I'm totally in the mood for sometimes, but not all the times. Relentless, that record, I'm always in the mood for that. It's fucking great. And Be Forewarned, not quite as strong as that, but it's still really good. You really can't beat the catchiness of Vampire Love, and a lot of the riffs on here are just fucking perfect. Came out in the early 90s. Peaceful's been doing a great job with reissuing a lot of essential stuff, so that's what this came out on. Originally, it might have come out on Peaceful, I don't remember. Oh yeah, almost forgot. I got some Noothgrush going back into Sludge here. I realized I had it in my head that most of the stuff was Sludge stuff, but it's really only a few things. Might as well mention Noothgrush. This is all live Noothgrush stuff that was recorded in a couple different radio sessions. They were a California band that... This is their full length. They were a California sludge band that did a lot of splits and had a strong connection to the power violence scene. A few of the members came from Asbestos Death, that was a pre-Sleep band, and it's just nasty, filthy, very, very punk and hardcore influenced sludge stuff. They did a split with Black Army Jacket, and a few other bands of that note from that scene. And yeah, it's just dirty sludge. That's really all I got to say about it. It's real good. I will say that this one, the self-titled, is a little bit more on the doom metal side. It's a little bit more clean in the vocal department, and a little bit more like despondent sounding, and the songs are a little bit longer. It's also really good. So that's all I got for you right now. Talk to you later.